the name of Allah, the most gracious and most merciful, may the peace and blessings of Allah the Exalted be upon the Prophet Muhammad and his purified progeny, and may the wrath of Allah be upon their enemies. Dear brothers and sisters, 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗧𝗓𝗦𝗧. Welcome to episode 4. In the last episode we discussed the amount of Jizyah, and we said it's not a fixed amount. Classes were divided up between people, and ultimately it goes down to the Imam to decide on the amount, or possibly the person who is running the legitimate Islamic state. However, this is a disputed matter amongst the scholars of whether an Islamic state can be established in the time of the Imam or not. And I personally am not subscribing to any particular opinion, rather I am just stating them. So we found that Imam Ali alayhi salam, out of his kindness, when he was sent gifts by the Zoroastrians, who are also the people of the book, he was sent bowls of sugar, silver bowls of sugar, and he deducted this from their Jizyah tax. So he took this as a contribution. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, he didn't have to do this, but out of his fairness, and to of course establish good relations and show his fairness to the people, he did this. Now, the last point we mentioned in the last episode was about that some people say that Jizyah is a type of extortion money and tax, and the non-Muslims and enemies of Islam try to put forth this doubt. But this can be easily refuted, because as we know, this type of extortion money that's taken by the mafia and these gangsters, they put people into a debt that they can never pay back. For example, human trafficking. They traffic someone over to a particular country and they give them a type of endless debt, and they abuse them, and they don't distinguish between men, women or whoever. They just want the money, or they maybe force some women into prostitution, and they use intimidation, violence and these types of methods. So dear brothers and sisters, when we speak about these topics such as Jizyah, such as slavery, things that not necessarily apply now, we need to look at the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his purified progeny, and the Ahlul-Bayt, peace and blessings of Allah be upon them. We need to look at their conduct and how they, for example, would treat slaves, or how they would collect taxes. And when we analyze and look into their biographies and personalities, we see that they, despite being the hujjah of Allah, the proofs of Allah on earth, they acted in such a humble way with even slaves, to the extent that it's reported, I believe was it the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some of the Imams alayhim salam, they would actually work and help these slaves, or in other words, sometimes we could say servants. So we know that their seerah was one of humility, and it was not one of intimidation and scaring people when it comes, unlike what mafias and gangs do when they collect extortion money. So let us look into the biography of Imam Ali alayhi salam, who is of course the outstanding example of justice and fairness to the whole of humanity. So we go to Nahj al-Balagha, and Imam Ali alayhi salam, he gave his advice to land tax collectors. So this is not Jizyah, but it's a type of tax where Imam Ali alayhi salam wrote to them to give them advice on how to do this. So now when we look at the types of methods in terms of collecting tax in general, we see, was this one of intimidation, putting fear into people, using violence against them, or was it one of fairness, one of justness and one of kindness? Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says in addressing the land collectors, behave yourselves justly with the people and act with endurance with regard to their needs, because you are the treasurers of the people, the representatives of the community and the ambassadors of the Imams. Do not deprive anyone of his needs, and do not prevent him from, in brackets, securing his requirements. for the collection of tax, so this is talking about the land tax, from the people, do not sell their winter or summer clothes, nor cattle with which they work, nor slaves. So Imam Ali alayhi salam here, he's basically saying that, in order to get this tax, don't take away everything that the person has. Do not take away his livelihood and oppress him in such a way. We find that in the West, sometimes when there are bailiffs and people in debt, they make the situation even worse for that person to get out of the debt, because they may take every possession that he owns. They may take his car, they may take his house, and then in reality he can never pay back these debts. He ends up as homeless and on the streets. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, we derive from this teaching that do not oppress people in this way. Of course, a person who has given money, or he's lent something, or has a debt for someone that has to pay him, he has his right. But at the same time, Imam Ali alayhi salam is trying to tell us, or trying to tell these land tax collectors, that do not deprive these people of their necessities. Again, what does he say? For the collection of tax from the people, do not sell their winter or summer clothes, nor cattle with which they work, nor slaves or servants. There's different translations depending on the text of who translates it. So this is very different as compared to how some debt collection would occur in the West, where the person is completely stripped of everything, and within the Islamic teaching it's not telling the person, the land tax collector, to go strip the person from everything that they have. We go to the next part of this saying, which is very vital in understanding the ethics that were put forth by Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says, وَلَا تَضْرِبُنَّ أَحَدًا سَوْفًا لِمَكَانِ دِرْهَمٍ. So do not whip anyone for the sake of 1 dirham. So again, I said what? We understand the seerah of the Imams alayhim salam, that it wasn't one of violence and intimidation to people. If this is how Imam Ali alayhi salam instructed the land collectors to collect this land tax, then how about Jizyah as well? We see that the seerah of Ahlul-Bayt alayhim salam was like this: وَلَا تَضْرِبُنَّ أَحَدًا سَوْتًا لِمَكَانِ دِرْهَمٍ. Do not whip anyone for the sake of 1 dirham. Do not touch the property of any person, whether he be one who prays, so a Muslim, or a protected unbeliever, unless you find a horse or weapons used to attack Muslims, because it is not proper for the Muslims to leave these things in the hands of the enemies. So again, another point when we analyze this quote, what did Imam Ali alayhi salam say? So he said, do not hit them. So this is again, do not be harsh with them, do not take the necessities that they have, the necessary items in their lives. And then again he says, do not touch the property of any person, whether he be one who prays, so a Muslim, or a protected unbeliever. So this again shows that the Muslim and the unbeliever have these equal rights under an Islamic state. And someone might come and say, okay, why aren't we discussing the verse of Jizyah from the beginning? So 𝗙𝗢𝗧𝗓 الْجِزْيَةَ عَنْ يَدٍ وَهُمْ صَاغِرُونَ. Why don't we discuss this verse first? I'll come to that inshallah ta'ala, and that will be the last thing we discuss, because before this we need to see how the Ahlul-Bayt alayhim salam acted towards non-Muslims and acted towards Muslims, and acted in general in collecting taxes. Imam Ali alayhi salam wasn't someone who came across like one of these Daeshi savages. Rather, he was someone of justice and equity. This is what we see from the seerah of the Imams alayhim salam, that he says, do not go around with a whip hitting people and beating them and putting fear in their hearts for the sake of money. And this is in letter 51. So we've got past that point. Oh, taxes in Islam and Jizyah, something that is violent, something that is intimidating and is the equivalent to extortion money from the mafia and gangs. completely false when we look into the biography of Imam Ali alayhi salam and how his conduct was. And his conduct is not comparable with modern day criminals and thugs, as we see from what he instructed his land tax collectors. He could have said to them, go to these people and beat them so badly and take everything they have, but this is not what Imam Ali alayhi salam said. And as Shia, we learn from these superior ethics that were taught and given out to mankind by the Imams. So the next part we come up to is that we've answered this about how taxes in Islam should be taken according to Imam Ali alayhi salam. So the next question arises that, okay, so these non-Muslims, they agree they want to live peacefully, they want to be protected. So what benefits do the non-Muslims and the people of the book, and of course we'll discuss, do non-people of the book pay jizya or not, what benefits do they receive for making this contribution? One, they are free to carry out their religious ceremonies and rites. And this is unlike what the Daesh thugs did when they destroyed their churches and they destroyed their places of worship and oppressed these people of the book. They have a choice, the people of the book, whether they want to go to a Muslim judge or they can go to their own judges. But are some freedoms limited? Are things which cause corruption and cause disadvantage to the society allowed? Because we always get this notion from atheists and people that don't believe in any religion that, oh, freedom. But what is the actual definition of freedom? Should someone's personal freedom be allowed when their personal, so-called personal freedom infringes upon the rights of the whole society and causes damage? So what did I mention here? I said that, okay, they can have their own judges, they can go to Muslim courts, they are able to practice their religious rights. They can even have churches. Some people say no, they're not allowed to have churches. They're not allowed to ring a bell. This is a matter that's discussed. But within discussions, some of the scholars, they mentioned that no, if the non-Muslims, if they allow the Muslims, like now we live in the UK, we live maybe in America, in the West, in Canada, we're able to practice our religion freely. So if they are giving the freedom to the non-Muslims in their countries, to the Muslims in their countries to practice their religious rights, then the same can be done by the leader of the legitimate Islamic state, where he says that yes, they can have churches, because they also show fairness towards the Muslims. And we find that there are many historical churches that you go to Iraq, the historical churches there are churches from many years ago, hundreds of years ago, maybe thousands, which shows that Muslims and the non-Muslims, the people of the book, coexisted peacefully together. So back to the point that I was mentioned. Are they, the Ahlul-Kitab, allowed to do everything? As we know, there are clear differences between the Islamic religion and the religion of the people of the book. One thing that many Christians engage in is the consumption of alcohol. They may drink wine, the Christians and the Jews. Is it against personal freedom for someone to come along and say, oh, okay, so in Islamic state, if I have full freedom, I should be allowed to drink openly. I should be allowed to promote alcohol. I should be allowed to encourage others to drink. This is my freedom. Shouldn't get involved in that. If I want to drink, if I want to open a bar or a club or these types of places, I should be able to do so. This is one question that comes. Another question that comes is that, okay, the Ahlul Kitab, they can live peacefully under the Muslims, but can they propagate their religion? Can they give tabligh? Can they call people to their religion? These are two questions, inshallah ta'ala, we want to answer in our 5th episode. Namely, what can the non-Muslims engage in things which are haram, such as alcohol, drink these things openly? And can they propagate their religion? So inshallah ta'ala, in the next episode we will start by reading some ahadith from al-Kafi regarding this issue of the consumption of alcohol openly within a legitimate Dawlatul Islamiyah. So please join me for the next episode, dear brothers and sisters. And we quickly recap again before we leave that we looked at the ethics of Imam Ali alayhi salam and how he, of course, instructed people to collect taxes. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم ولعن أعداءهم. بمحمد بن علي بفاطمة بالحسن بالحسين بالأئمة الأطهار.